In the course of your spiritual path, not everyone supports you and not everyone approves. This full moon is in Purva Phalguni Nakshatra, and a really well-known native is Madonna. So consider, last time Dinesh Nakshatra for the new moon, that was Marilyn Monroe. So consider the difference between Marilyn Monroe and Madonna, both iconic women. Here's the difference to point out. They were both sex symbols, but they were different. So Marilyn Monroe was very feminine and acquiesced. She had a certain usefulness because she made people feel a certain way. Madonna also has a usefulness, but in a different way. Madonna was not this blank canvas waiting for somebody to show her what to be. She was a woman with a vision, and what her vision was, what her creativity was, evolved over time, but she was the one with the vision. She was the one with the creativity. She was the one with the hard work. She was also the one who never stopped to ask people what they thought. She wasn't concerned if people liked her or agreed with what she was doing or how was she doing in the polls. She wasn't really concerned with public opinion. She had a vision and she realized that creative vision. So she is this epitome of creative force energy. Now, Phalguni means the pink fleshy parts of a woman. So this nakshatra is very much about sex, and sex is creativity. Sexual energy is creative energy. The two are not separate. The nakshatra is in Leo. All of these elements are encompassed in the 5th house. So anytime you are creating something, it's with this sexual energy. Now let's think about it for a minute in your own life. Esoterically, sex is not something that is stigmatized as it is in many cultures. So let's apply that principle in our own lives. While the words are very easy to say, be yourself, express yourself, be who you want to be, there are consequences to being who you want to be, especially if you are on a spiritual path, especially if you have some sense of purpose in the world, especially if you walk with direction and know that the endeavors you undertake have some more significant purpose. So what you are creating, not everybody sees it. Actually, nobody sees it. Only you see it. Other people can get pieces of it and maybe get an idea of what you're doing if they are so inclined to think that way. But you can't ever count on anybody to know what you're doing. So what happens is somebody will step in without knowing what the big picture looks like, without really knowing what you're creating, and they just pick apart the little things that you do. They pick apart the little pieces of how you do things. They see sections of your work and critique those sections, but they don't see the whole of your work. Only you see the whole of your work. So again, while it seems very easy to say, oh, just be yourself, walk with your purpose, there are consequences. If you have people around you who, for example, have different religious views or different spiritual views, sometimes there are consequences to that. Sometimes you're ostracized, sometimes you're considered evil, sometimes you're considered bad. There are consequences. If you have questions about what's going on, and for example, you go to see a mental health professional, and they don't know what you're talking about because they don't see the esoteric world, they don't have the abilities you have, they don't have the sight that you have, they'll look at you like you're crazy, and then that doesn't help at all. Or if you talk to just a regular person who doesn't have what you have, they don't see what you see, and they don't have the capacity to understand what you're talking about. What happens is that each time we encounter those situations, even though you know better, but still it chips away at you little by little by little. So it's not the grand sense of purpose, it's these little things, it's these small pebbles in your shoe that make the walk harder, that make the journey harder. But all of these parts that other people think are weird, that other people don't understand, but these parts that are actually the most interesting part of you, if you could talk about anything, this is what you would talk about. Keep developing those parts. Keep developing those parts. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says. Keep developing those parts because they are your most interesting parts. What you're curious about, this is what cures you. What you have the eye to see, the truth as you understand it, your perspective, that is what makes you your unique self. And nobody can see that but you. That means nobody else has that to offer to the world except you. So when these times come, when these small incisions of doubt come at you, you remember only you see what you see. And the fact that you see it, it's very important to bring it into the world. And that's what this nakshatra is about. The moon is in Purva Phalguni nakshatra. Preceding that was Maga, the ancestors, and Purva Phalguni is becoming immersed in another body. So you're out of the world and now you're in the world and creating. It's the power of positive procreation and actually the ability to create something. The symbols of it are a bed or a cot, a hammock, a platform. So what's associated with it is, think a platform, a guru, somebody teaching on a platform. So knowledge, and then the bed, a resting place. So a place temporarily where knowledge comes into the world and has a place to be expressed, but for now is resting. This energy also has to do with purging and releasing, because when something new comes in, we have to have let something else go. So these past few months, where we've been working on these changing situations and deciding what stays, what serves our highest purpose, what serves our path versus what impedes our path, we're making these changes and we're looking at our relationships and we're looking at our livelihoods and we're looking at our pastimes and we're looking at our friends and deciding what's there versus what should go. Everything that you've released, everything that you've calmly closed the door on has made room for now this creative energy from above. This nakshatra is also about divine partnership. So it's something from above that the individual is trying to merge with. It's the soul being let loose in the material world to gather knowledge, and then looking at who we partner with, how we partner with ourselves, and are we working with ourselves or against ourselves? So the lunar period of these next 2 weeks is this place of rest and acknowledging what's now come into your life, what resources you have available to you, and looking at what your soul is here to do. Uranus is in the 4th house in this chart, and the 4th house is our place of origin, our sense of home. It can either be the literal home or where we feel at home. And the fact that Uranus is present in the 4th house in this chart is indicating that how we feel about home is going to change. Creative energy is sexual energy. So for a minute, let's consider the tie between nudity and knowledge. Think of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, that story. Adam and Eve were naked. That wasn't the problem. The problem is when they became aware of the fact that they were naked. So it wasn't the nudity itself, it was awareness of it. We are made to feel so ashamed of our sex, of our body, of our physical desires, our imaginative desires. There's barely a place you can look where someone's not trying to make you feel self-conscious because they're trying to also sell you a solution. It can take a lifetime just to get over not feeling self-conscious about your appearance or your body or what your utility is to the opposite sex, because we even conceptualize our own usefulness to how, especially as women, whether or not men find us attractive. Thus, like, if men find us sexually useful to them. So it's interesting, right? Like, that dynamic's not the problem, but calling attention to that dynamic, awareness, and then bringing to conscious awareness that we are aware that that's happening. That's the problem. That's when you become a feminist. That's when you become a loudmouth person. That's when you become problematic, when you start to make other people feel uncomfortable. And that has to do with people who are trying to use your energy and redirect your creative energy, your sexual energy, in a way that's useful to them. Whereas this nakshatra is having you bring it back to yourself and the knowledge of how powerful that is and what you can do if that energy is harnessed and directed in a productive way. The setup alone of this chart is very telling. The first thing is what's called a bucket. So you have the moon, the handle, and then all of the other planets below. So you have the moon, your internal, your mentality, how you feel about things, your emotional state, casting light on all of the other elements. So how you're feeling about something, how you've been thinking about something, how you've been internally processing something. Now you're looking at that new mentality and you're looking at all of the areas of your life that you've been processing this information. The other thing, right? So the moon is in the 8th house and the sun is in the 2nd. So the 2-8 axis is the same axis that the eclipses were on back in December. The 2nd house has to deal with esteem. It also has to deal with our stuff, the money you make from the work that you do, but your esteem, reinforced by the stuff you have to speak for you. That's opposed to where the moon is now in the 8th house, and the 8th house is about alchemy and transformation and going deep. Your most vulnerable self is the 8th house. So when you're done with your transit in the 8th house, it's a different type of self-esteem. It's a self-esteem that's invisible. So whereas the second house is your stuff, but you have something to show for it, and that's how you derive your esteem, eighth house is something different. So it's the esteem you get from the spiritual work that you've done, but on the exterior, you don't have anything tangible to show for it. So consider how that shows up in the world. How we consider somebody who has done well. You have cool stuff. You have a nice house. You have a good income. You've got a cool car. You've got nice clothes. You can go places. You have stuff. So your stuff somehow speaks for you. And the way we get wrapped up in that is very subtle. How you get to see what you're really about is after that eighth house action. After you've gone through these invisible depths of things that you didn't want to visit, and you go through all the dirty, dark places of your existence, your background, your shame about money, your shit, like all of the secrets, all of the things that you never once said, when you come out the other side of your eighth house, the strength that you have is internal. It's a spiritual strength that you've had. Accumulation is the wrong word. So second and eighth house are different. So that's what this new moon is. Moon is in the eighth house, so you're going through something internal. Any growth you have that happens internally, nobody gives you a paycheck for that. So if it feels like thankless work, that's because socially it's not something that's particularly valued. The aspects for this chart are very interesting too. You have Saturn square Uranus as a feature. So Saturn, structure, coming up against Uranus, disruptions. So disruptions in your structure. Pluto is trining Mars. Pluto, looking underneath things, and then Mars, what are you going to do about it? So now that you have this truth, what are you going to do about it? Moon, trining Uranus. Trine means that this is just a very natural energy flow. So you are now in the mood to do something unexpected. And then Sun, sextiling Uranus, there's an opportunity there. Taurus, sun, moon, and rising. This full moon is taking place in your fourth house, and fourth house has to do with your origins, your roots, your home, the place where you feel comfortable. And it's asking you to look at the relationships around you, how you express yourself in your home, and are these relationships helping you to do that or hindering your expression? Are they limiting you or are they encouraging you? Your fourth house is opposite your 10th house. So the moon in the fourth is shining light on your 10th house of public reputation and career. How things work at home affects what's happening in your career and work. Who you are behind the scenes, who you are where you get comfortable, inevitably has an effect when you step into your office or when you step into a work or professional setting. Taurus, your natural ruler is second house. You like stuff. You like your stuff. You work for your stuff, but you like it and you get it by working for it. So this is a really important access because what's at home, how you feel comfortable, how you relax your body, how you nurture yourself, how you feed yourself, all of the things that are very Taurian. You don't do your best out in the world unless you have a really relaxed place. And if you're looking to express yourself creatively in the world, how you're able to express yourself creatively in private in your home has a huge impact on that. So that is what this full moon is having you look at. Now, Pluto, the planet of transformation, is transiting your ninth house, and your ninth house has to do with the expression of your higher mind. So higher learning, religious pursuits, learning about spirituality, travel. And Pluto has been looking closely at these things. Like Pluto has been having you look closely at these things and think about what you really want. What is your higher expression? How is that to express itself? How is that to manifest in the world? So you've been having a look at that, right? So Pluto, the looking at it, and now Mars, the action. Mars is in your first house. So whatever you've been looking at, whatever you've decided, you're going to take some action that has to do in your first house. Now, your first house has to do with yourself and your physical body, what your exercise regimen is like. So you're going to take some control of you, and it's going to be a natural, like it's a trine, so it's a natural flow. So the way that you're looking to expand yourself, you're going to take some action with your actual physical self. Now, Saturn is also in your ninth house, and Saturn is restrictions, limitations. It can also in that house be the structure of how you think about things. Maybe how you think about travel, working, or how you think about what higher educational pursuits, what structure those would take, right? So it's structure having to deal with how your mind expands or how you expand through travel, through learning. And it's squaring Uranus, planet of the unexpected, in your first house. which has to do with you. So you've been thinking about how you're going to expand yourself, ninth house, and then you also have a set way of how you've been thinking that would work. So you're going to take some action, you're going to initiate some action with yourself, first house, but it's not going to look like how you thought it would be, Uranus, first house. There is going to be some surprise. There is going to be something that happens that is unexpected, and it could be something that either really helps you along or really doesn't help you along. Right? Uranus is unexpected. But the thing to look for is nothing is either inherently good or inherently bad. It's just a circumstance. So whatever happens, look at the way you can integrate them. The way you work with a square is to be aware that it's happening, right? So be aware that you have this Saturnian limitation. You have this structure, the way that you're thinking something will go. And then you're probably going to have some occurrence that is not what you thought, it's not how you thought it would go. So as a Taurian, this is not your favorite thing. You really dig the plan. You like to stick with the plan. So be aware that it won't be like you thought it would be, and come prepared to work with that difference. Alternatively, be prepared for something really cool to happen that you just didn't see coming. Have you noticed that the places you once were are not the places you can be anymore? Where you've come from, that ground is burned behind you. Who you used to know, not only do they not do it for you anymore, but you physically have a hard time being around them. Energetically, it just doesn't fit anymore. It's just not a match anymore. But more than intellectually challenging, it's actually physically challenging. It's energetically challenging. Socially, that's very awkward because you don't fit in. You fit in fewer and fewer places. But in a spiritual sense, this is good news because it means you're growing. So it means the clearing out, and then the people you're going to meet, you're now making room for them, and they are an energetic match. Maybe they're not doing exactly what you are doing, but you guys are headed in the same direction, and you'll find more people who are headed in a similar direction. This is growth. So here's how to use the energy for the next couple weeks. Purva Phalguni is the coming together of things. So the feminine aspect from above and the masculine aspect, the material aspect from below. You're bringing them together. And this nakshatra is a place where the knowledge finds temporary rest and is regrouping and deciding what to do. So you have Kama, the purpose, the desire to create something. You have Venus, the ruler, who imparts wisdom and counsel and advice. And you have Vishnu, the deity, which is about the preservation of what is coming into being. So presently, we're at a place where your soul is finding rest before you begin the next stages of your journey. So what you can do in this time, pull your resources together, right? If you haven't watched the last video of the new moon, watch it. Along your path, when things weren't going how you thought they should go, you learned a lot of other things. You encountered a lot of other people. You maybe worked at different jobs, you learned different trades, you maybe developed abilities, you met people who taught you things, you had time to read things, you had time to learn things. But what your knowledge looks like now, what your experience looks like now, is far more advanced than probably what you think it is. Because what you learn when things aren't going how you think, that's its own university. So you pull your resources together. Who do you know now? What do you know now? How can you apply it now? And you start to plan your next moves. And then the second element of this is that service is based on friendship and trust. So who's around you? Who can help you move in the direction you're moving? Who can you trust? It's odd too, as you start to enter into these things, people you've known forever or for a long time, they don't know what you're talking about. And then you can meet somebody who is a perfect stranger and you fall right into that conversation because you speak the same language. So we're looking at who's not an energetic or spiritual fit for you and who is an energetic or spiritual fit for you to enhance your ability to bring your creative expression into the world. So for right now, pull your resources together, integrate all of the experiences you've come through, and appreciate how difficult your journey's been and how far you've come and all of the things you know now. It's not a small thing. So take inventory, integrate, consider your partnerships, and rest.